Edgewood University. Year 1. Episode 19. Home. No matter wherever you end up, you will always find your way back home. Layla scoffed and walked toward Connor. The warlock guards shocked her, and she looked at them angrily. The men dropped the metal poles and ran. She touched Connor's face, and the enchanted restraints crumbled away. He stretched his wings, grabbed her face, and looked into her eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked, rubbing her cheek with his thumb. Layla nodded, and Connor kissed her. She smiled quickly, and she and Connor turned a glowing glare at Peter. The headmaster grinned nervously and tried to run, but Tyler, Faith, Alex, Bailey, Cody, and Cassidy boxed him in. He put his hands up and pleaded. "Come on, kids. I'm just trying to save us all," he cried, and Cody and Alex snarled. "First, by sacrificing my friends," snarled Tyler, eyes glowing red. Peter looked at his son, smirked, and chuckled. "I forgot you took the alpha power from me. Shall we go for round 2? He asked with glowing eyes, and Connor snarled protectively. Alex, Faith, Cody, and Tyler snarled, making their sharp claws appear, and Layla growled, extending her wings, claws, and growing canines. Bailey stared at Peter with blazing purple eyes, and Bailey held out her hands as her eyes turned white and smirked. He looked at the werewolves and supernatural students and sighed. "Okay, maybe I did take things a little too far, but I'm only trying to do what's best for Edgewood and the university," he explained, and Faith snarled. "We're spreading horrific lies and sacrificing my brother." Her student body and faculty froze in horror and didn't move from their seats. Peter swallowed hard, and the group glared at him. Suddenly, Layla thought she heard something and listened closely. She heard the sound of vehicles approaching and looked at Connor and Tyler. She pointed to her ear and swallowed hard. "Someone's coming," she breathed. Connor and Tyler listened and heard car doors closing and footsteps approaching them. Layla, Faith, Bailey, and Cassidy glanced at each other, and Alex and Cody looked around. "Stop! Hold it right there!" yelled a woman with glowing green eyes and long black hair. Peter and the kids looked at the woman, and Peter snarled with glowing eyes. "Me guess," he growled, and she gave him a thoughtful look. "Maya told us you resurfaced. Peter Tate, Beta Wolf of the Tate Pack. I, Helen Meigas, hereby relieve you as headmaster and from all duties. You are stripped of your magic and under arrest for the murder of Maya Tate." 4 tall, muscular men dressed in black and silver armor and purple amulets marched across the lawn and surrounded Peter. 2 men grabbed him, and he started to struggle. The amulets around the guard's neck began to glow, and Peter sighed. Their pendants contained concentrated wolf's bane, making the old werewolf weak. "Take him," demanded the woman, and the men dragged Tyler's father toward the school. Connor pulled Layla close and wrapped his arms around her, sighing in relief. "It's over," he whispered, and she nodded. He pulled back, smiled, and held her against his chest. Tyler, Faith, Cassidy, Cody, Bailey, and Alex stared at the woman as they walked toward their friends. She turned toward the group, and student body smiled and folded her hands. "Hello to you all. It's lovely to see your beautiful faces, and I apologize for this dreadful night. My name is Helen Meigas, and I am the new headmistress for Edgewood University," she said, and the students whispered to each other. "Now, I know things have been super exciting around here, and I think you all could use some rest, knowing this school is now safe. We end the school year in tragedy, and I think it's best if you all go home, mourn over our lost ones, clear your heads, rest, and sort this all out. There are additional staff with me if anyone wants to talk. That's what they're here for. You may be excused." The student body and faculty gathered chairs and carried them to the great hall. Helen turned toward Layla and a group and hummed. "Now, as for you 8, come with me," she said. Connor, Tyler, Cody, and Alex took the girls' hands and followed their new headmistress into the school. Helen sighed, walked into the destroyed office, and snapped her fingers. The destruction disappeared, and a new office appeared. New books, cherry wood shelves, cabinets, and a large desk appeared before a fireplace. Cherry wood chairs with red satin cushioned seats and drapes to match appeared, and the floor turned the same brown granite as the school walls. She smiled, waved her hand, and started a fire. "That's better," she breathed, sitting in the chair behind the desk. Helen looked at Connor and smiled. "Hello, old friend," she said, and Connor smiled. "Hello, Helen," he said, and Layla looked at him oddly. She made a face, and Connor laughed, shaking his head. "I know what you're thinking. And no, she's 400 years older than I am, you perv." He teased, and her mouth dropped open. Tyler busted out laughing, and Layla gave him a dirty look. Helen chuckled and cleared her throat. "So, I've heard from other students you all sleep in the same suite on the girls' side. The school rules clearly state boys and girls live in separate dormitories," she said, picking up a pen and tapping on her desk. Bailey, Alex, Tyler, Faith, Cassidy, Cody, and Layla looked at each other and swallowed hard. Connor chuckled, and Layla looked at him, shaking her head. Helen looked at him and raised an eyebrow. Connor looked at the headmistress and snorted. "You're serious," he said, and Tyler snickered. Helen eyed Connor and Tyler and leaned across the desk. "I'd like to know what's so funny, Mr. Lancer and Mr. Tate," she said, and Connor cleared his throat. "With everything that's gone on, you're scolding us about school rules?" he asked, crossing his arms, and the headmistress tilted her head. "No, Mr. Lancer, I'm not scolding you. You and the pack are moving to the pack dormitory. There's a small 4-bedroom cottage just off the stone circle. When you return next semester, you 8 will not be returning to your suites," she said, sliding a set of keys across the table. Layla and Faith looked at each other, and Bailey and Cassidy grinned. Bailey's smile faded, and she looked at Helen. "You moving us out of school?" she asked, and the headmistress nodded, giving her a clever look. "I can't have the other students thinking I show favoritism to rule breakers now, can we?" Bailey shook her head, and Helen smiled. Layla looked at her oddly and raised her eyebrows. "For next semester? But we barely started the first." And chuckled and sat down. "Layla, sweetheart, with all the excitement lately, I guess the time flew by. We are at the end of the semester, a very short semester, but you and the students will have a 3-month-long break. When everyone comes back, we can start a fresh, new start. I think everyone deserves a little time for themselves to regroup." Layla thought momentarily and nodded. "Yeah, I guess you're right," she sighed. "So it's time to return to your suites, pack up, and head home. I've sent letters to everyone's parents to let them know. Have a great summer, and see you when you get back." The group nodded. Connor grabbed the keys, and they left the office. Layla, Connor, Faith, Tyler, Bailey, Alex, Cassidy, and Cody smiled and left the office. They walked down the hallway, looked at each other, and Faith snorted. "So, we break the rules, and our punishment is a house we all can live in?" she asked, and Tyler shrugged. He put his arm around her shoulders and smiled. "Shit could be worse," he mentioned, and she nodded. "Hey, I'm not complaining," she purred, bumping him with her shoulder. They reached the guy's suite, and Alex and Cody kissed Bailey and Cassidy and went inside. Tyler smirked, let go of Faith, and she grinned. Connor grabbed Layla's face and kissed her softly. "See you soon," he said, and walked inside. Layla sighed happily, and the girls laughed, heading toward their dormitory. Connor, Alex, and Cody packed their things and went to the girls' suite. Tyler helped Faith pack and went into Layla's room. She smiled, and his smile faded. "Looks like I'm going to be stuck here," he sighed, and Layla walked toward him and put her arms on his shoulders. Turned that frown upside down. "You're coming home with me," she said, and Tyler chuckled, putting his hands on her waist. Connor looked at them, felt jealousy creep up, and growled. Layla gave him a knowing look, and he stopped growling. Tyler shook his head and sighed. "Or they think I'm dead. If they see me, I'm sure they will lose their minds." "Not if we tell them the truth together." Tyler looked at her oddly and shook his head. "We're not supposed." She put a finger on his lips, cutting him off, and shook her head. "I have permission from the higher-ups to tell them." He searched her eyes, sighed, and nodded. "Well, Connor, it's back to the bar for us," said Faith, walking in, and Layla shook her head. "Nope, have someone else run the bar. You're coming with us," she said, and Faith's eyes widened. "Really? You want me to come home with you?" she asked, and Layla smiled, nodding. "Yeah, it's going to be pretty boring with 2 guys and no girl to talk to," she said, and Connor raised an eyebrow. "You want me to come too?" Layla shook her head. No, I thought Alex or Cody would join us, she said, and he frowned. She, Faith, and Tyler snorted, and Layla walked toward him. Babe, don't get your panties in a wad. I was joking, she whispered dramatically, and he pouted, shaking his head. No, my old feelings are hurt. Layla snickered, grabbed his beard, and turned his head. Shut up! Connor chuckled, hooked his finger under her chin, and kissed her softly. We'd be honored to join you, he said, and Faith nodded. All right, our cars are here, said Cassidy as she and Bailey walked into the room. Layla threw her arms around her friends, and they giggled, hugging her back. I'm going to miss you guys so much, said Layla, tearing up, and Cassidy laughed, wiping her cheeks. Me too, she said, and Bailey agreed. Cody and Alex hugged the girls, and Connor, Tyler, and Faith joined the embrace. You have fun, and we'll see you next semester, said Bailey. They let go of one another, and Alex, Bailey, Cassidy, and Cody left the suite. Connor and Tyler ran back to Tyler's suite, and Tyler packed his stuff. They grabbed their bags and met Layla and Faith in front of the school. They waved to the students as they left, and a few hugged Layla and Connor. Layla's car pulled up, and the driver got out. He smiled, and Connor and Tyler grabbed their bags and the girls' suitcases. Hello, Miss Holland. Now that you have survived your first semester at Edgewood and are returning, I am your permanent driver. My name is Hester, he said, and Layla smiled. Hello, Hester, and you may call me Layla. Okay, Layla. Are your friends traveling with you to Mortar? She looked at her friends and smiled. Yes, they are, but they aren't just my friends. They're my pack. She sighed proudly, and Hester smiled. All right, shall we? He asked, opening the back door. Layla grinned and nodded. Connor, Layla, Faith, and Tyler sat in the back seat, and they watched the school disappear out the back window. Layla leaned over Connor's lap, watching as they passed through the beautiful mountain town. Next year, I want to come here and check this place out, she said, sitting down, and Connor put his arm around her. Tyler held Faith's hand and gave Layla a thoughtful look. So, how are we going to break it to your parents that I'm alive and you being connected to the supernatural world? Layla rested her leg over Connor's and snuggled into his rib cage. I called them before we left. I told them I was bringing my friends with me and they were going to see something they didn't understand and not to freak out. My mom totally freaked out and begged for me to tell her, but I said it was something she had to see, and my dad actually asked if I was pregnant, she said, throwing her arms in the air. Connor, Faith, and Tyler chuckled, and she shook her head. I also told them whatever they knew about fairy tales to believe it, whatever it may be. Connor rubbed her leg, and Faith held her hand, leaning her head against her shoulder. Whatever happens, we're here to help in any way, said Tyler, and Faith and Connor agreed. Layla, it's about that time, said Hester, and she tilted her head, looking at the driver. For what? She asked, and he slid on his sunglasses. Oh shit. Okay. Guys, shield your eyes, she said, and Tyler looked at her oddly. Layla threw her arm over her eyes and put her hand over Connor's eyes, and Faith covered her face. Tyler shook his head, and the blinding light filled the car. He groaned, covering his eyes, and Layla snickered. I told you, she said, and put her arm down. Tyler shook his head and blinked, and Faith chuckled, putting her hand on his arm. The stinging and burning subsided, and he blew a relieved breath. Thanks, babe. Any time, she said, and Layla looked at her hand. What did you do? She asked. I healed him. Werewolves can help each other heal once you've, Connor inhaled sharply, and Faith bit her bottom lip, smirking. Once you've what? Asked Layla, and he rubbed her arm. Chosen your mate, said Connor, and Faith nodded. Connor gave Tyler a warning look, and Tyler raised his hands. Dude, I get it. I don't need you to start hating me again, he said, and Connor snickered. As long as we're on the same page. Layla gasped and leaned over the front seat. There it is, she exclaimed, and Hester chuckled. She never thought she would be so happy to see her plain and ordinary house, but her parents were there, and it was home. Tyler sighed happily. He missed living in Mortar and being close to his best friend. He remembered the attic and made a face. Layla knew that face and laughed. It's boarded up and covered. You can't even tell it was there," she said, and he grinned shyly. The car pulled up and parked in front of the wooden steps. Celine and Daniel walked out onto the porch and smiled. Layla and Tyler exchanged looks, and they got out of the car. Celine's and Daniel's smiles faded, and Celine's hands went to her face as tears slid down her cheeks.